The Buccaneers are back in action this week, heading to Cleveland to take on the Browns. We discuss how they can stop Nick Chubb and what the offense has to do to be successful. Let's go.
You are Locked On Buccaneers, your daily Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, and welcome to the Locked On Bucs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We are your daily podcast covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. And we thank you for making us your first listen or view of the day. I am James Yarcho, deputy editor of SB Nation's BucsNation.com, joined as I always am on Wednesdays by my good buddy, Mr. Evan Klosky of 10 Tampa Bay. Of course, you can check out what he's doing on 10 Tampa Bay and at 10tampabay.com. Follow all the action on Twitter at Locked On Bucs, at JYarcho_Bucs, and at eKlosky. WTSP. Again, we thank you for making us your first listen or view of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. The Buccaneers are back at it this weekend. They are going to be taking on the Cleveland Browns. So it's time for us to finally start preparing to talk about a game. It's been a minute since we have done so. We're going to look ahead to the opponent, and there's no place better to start than with their best player, at least on the offensive side of the ball, Nick Chubb. Chubb is currently fourth in the NFL right now in rushing with 923 yards. Could break that 1,000-yard mark this weekend, averaging over 5 yards a carry. The Buccaneers have not been super great against the run this season, though the last two games did look much, much better against the run. Granted, they played the Rams, who can't run at all, but Kenneth Walker is an absolute weapon for the Seattle Seahawks, kept him in check most of the day. So, Evan, what do you think it's going to take for this Bucs defense to slow down Nick Chubb and a very successful Browns rushing attack?
What they usually do, right? I mean, the reason why the Buccaneers have their numbers the way that they are is because they were without Akeem Hicks for a large portion of the season. On top of that, they had some other injuries, even factoring in Zion McCollum playing a lot during the second half of the Carolina game, the entirety of the Baltimore Ravens game. You wouldn't think that's a big deal in the run, but containment on the edges is a huge deal. And if you just watch Carlton Davis and what he does on the edge versus what you saw Zion McCollum, who's a rookie, so I certainly am not burying him here. That's trial by fire, and those lessons are going to be learned that way. But there's a stark difference. So this team, this organization, ever since Todd Bowles has come in as defensive coordinator 3 years ago, now that he's been the head coach, they have a foundation on how to stop the run. They do it consistently, and there is a lot of beef in the middle again with those two guys. So what are the Browns going to do to combat that? And you would imagine they're going to have to run a lot of counters, work on the edges, and that's just going to be gap control and just doing your job, not trying to do anything outside of filling that gap. And just if they burn you through the pass a couple of times because you're worried about Chubb, that is okay. I think you just have to continue sticking with run first, react to the pass second, and as long as you do that, I think you'll take care of business. I don't know what the Bills did last week to stop Chubb, 14 attempts, 19 carries, but just run that back. Chubb actually became a little bit more of a threat in the passing game last week with his 3 receptions, 48 yards, and that sort of mitigated what he couldn't do on the ground. But I don't think it's super complicated.
Yeah, well, and of course, there's always the threat of Kareem Hunt coming in. So even when Chubb is out, the running attack can still be really good. But the Browns really didn't need to utilize Nick Chubb all that much because Amari Cooper had himself a day. And he's another weapon to be concerned about. He's quietly having a really, really good season.
Amazing.
He doesn't get the attention and the focus and the discussion on the national shows because he's not a Cowboy anymore. But he's coming off a week where he had 113 yards and 2 touchdowns. And Coop does seem to play better at home. 3 of his 5 games at home this year, he's gone for over 100 yards. He has no 100-yard games on the road because last week against the Bills was a neutral site game, so I'm not counting it for the sake of narrative. So is Carlton Davis going to be a guy that is going to be able to contain what Amari Cooper brings to this Browns offense in terms of big playability, reliability, keeping the chains moving? I mean, he does it all. He's still a very good wide receiver. It's just that he has Jacoby Beef Brisket throwing him the ball instead of, who he'll have next week in Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, so it's an interesting spot for Cleveland. One, you have to figure that they're in this transition phase of this, they have that on their minds. But if we look at the Buccaneers this season, only one wide receiver has tallied more than 100 yards against them, and that was Cooper Kupp. And they actually limited Cooper Kupp pretty well. It was just those were 2 chunk plays, and that pretty much got him over 100. Only 3 receivers have gone more than 75 yards against the Buccaneers defense. Kupp, Chase Claypool. Don't know where that went from. We've already dealt with that. And then Chris Olave had 80 for 5 in that contest, which, if I remember, that happened. He would have gotten over that benchmark when the game was out of hand in that last drive where Mikey Thomas started chipping in as well. So even that was kind of like a murkier one. So this Buccaneers defense understands how to hold receivers in check. Donovan Peoples-Jones is actually sort of a guy that's on the rise. He's being utilized more. He is his underlying analytics statistics are great. So he's certainly been a great complement to Amari Cooper. So I think that's also a concern. But again, you have Jamel Dean, you have Carlton Davis, you have pretty much your entire defense healthy outside of Logan Ryan. And when this defense is fully healthy, they are really tough to score against. And that has been proven week in, week out. Throw out the second half of the Panthers game, throw out the Baltimore Ravens game, and that is the Buccaneers defense the entire season. And I'm not too worried. I'm not too worried about what they're going to do with their weapons. It's more so how are the Browns going to overcome the Buccaneers defense versus then the Buccaneers overcoming what the Browns do offensively.
Well, it's definitely going to be an interesting matchup, and we're going to take a look at what the Bucs offense is going to be able to do against a Browns defense that has not put up great numbers, but they certainly have some incredible talent. We'll get to all of that in just a moment. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp Therapy Online. Unfortunately, life doesn't come with a user manual, so when it's not working for you, it's normal to feel stuck. BetterHelp has connected over 3 million people with licensed therapists. It's convenient, secure, and accessible anywhere, 100% online. Therapy can help you feel comfortable seeking the help or advice you need from someone without preconceived notions or a personal stake in what's going on. Just strictly what's best for you or helping you discover what's best for yourself. As someone who has been through therapy, I can attest that getting an opinion or guidance from somebody who wasn't a regular part of my life was extremely valuable. As the world's largest therapy service, they've matched millions of people with professionally licensed and vetted therapists available 100% online. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to match with a therapist. If things aren't clicking, you can easily switch to a new therapist anytime. It couldn't be simpler. Get unstuck with BetterHelp. Learn more and save 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/LockedOnNFL. That's betterhelp.com/LockedOnNFL. Segment 2 here of the Locked On Bucs podcast. We thank you for making us your first listen or view of the day. For your second listen, check out the biggest headlines in all of sports with Locked On Sports Today, available on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. We've talked about the studs on the Browns offense, but let's take a look at the other side of the ball. And the Browns defense, not great. Not great at all. They have the second worst scoring defense in the NFL. They allow 26.9 points per game. They allow over 135 yards a game on the ground. And they're kind of middle of the pack in passing defense, allowing 214.8 yards per game. Does this, in your opinion, have the makings of a Rachaad White, Leonard Fournette? Of course, we don't know Leonard Fournette's status quite yet. I assume he's going to play, but of course, he's still dealing with that hip injury suffered in Munich. But is this going to be a Rachaad White, Leonard Fournette game where the Bucs can expose a really bad run defense and control the clock in order to try to put together some sustained scoring drives like we saw them do against the Seattle Seahawks?
You would hope. The jury is still very much out on this Buccaneers rushing offense. I know we all want to get excited over what we've seen the last game, but
because Rachaad White's a first ballot Hall of Famer.
Pretty much. I mean, Rondé Barber is a semifinalist, and he's going to hand over the scepter to Rachaad White again when he gets the yellow jacket. It's going to be very emotional. We're all going to be crying.
Yes.
Having said that, the Rams game wasn't pretty either, right? Tom Brady's tremendous drive at the end of the game washed away what was another cruddy performance from the offense. The Seattle Seahawks game was unequivocally the best we've seen from this offense. I mean, 3 drives, 75 plus yards or more. Like, whoa. I mean, teams just don't do that, let alone this offense. And it's going to be rainy and windy in Cleveland. Well, it's always windy in Cleveland, but it's going to be rainy on top of that. So they're going to have to establish the run. Was Munich a fluke, or is that a sign of things to come? They are absolutely going to have to go back to the well running the ball. So be prepared, fans out there. You're going to be screaming at your TV because Byron Leftwich is still going to call a lot of runs. They're probably going to win some, lose some. And you're going to be stuck in those awkward positions because, even when they were running hot in Munich, they still, when Tom Brady cannot bail you out on 3rd and 7s every single time. That can happen once in a drive. It can't happen more than once because then you're playing with fire. So I am torn. They are certainly going to be committed to it. I think they have something there with Nick Leverett at guard. I think they found, and while his tape isn't perfect, he plays with perfect effort, and sometimes that overcomes the technical deficiencies that you have. And I think that with Rachaad White getting more time, that you're going to maybe finally have that balance that we've been asking for since week 3 or 4, that, Lenny doesn't have to be taken out of the game plan. It just should be a 50-50 split. And there are certain down and distances that Rachaad White should be in, because he's been succeeding a lot, especially 3rd and 1, 4th and 1 type things. Rachaad White has been very successful. Also on first downs, Rachaad White has been very successful. But, a lot of times they just kind of stick with one guy throughout a drive, and that's sort of the way that the cookie crumbles in that sense. I would like to see a little bit maybe more of how the Cowboys utilize Zeke and Tony Pollard, for how the Buccaneers utilize Lenny and Rachaad White. Funny enough, Lenny should be the guy picking up 3rd and 1s. He should be the bulldoze. North and south, I want Lenny running. And then I kind of want to use Rachaad White as my change of pace back, utilize him in the receiving game. Very versatile piece that can do anything. But Myles Garrett is a huge concern, and luckily, the edges are not the issue for Tampa Bay. I assume they're going to do a lot of games to try to get him on a guard, which, will be interesting to see. But Rachaad White's going to have to chip in that direction. If Lenny's playing, he's going to have to chip in that direction. You're always going to have to know what Myles is doing. But again, Tom Brady gets the ball off quickly. So it's going to be nothing new to him. He already has been working under duress this entire season. So if there's any team that can withstand what Myles Garrett does, where the quarterback's clock shrinks to 3 seconds, less than 3 seconds, it's Tom Brady. So I think the pieces are in place to handle everything that's coming their way. It's just a matter of, can they execute like they did in Munich, or was that a fluke?
Yeah, well, and let's talk about Myles Garrett for a minute, because he is an absolute monster. There's no question about it. 8.5 sacks, 9 tackles for loss. And, I've talked about it numerous times that I want to see multiple sets where the Bucs have Rachaad and Fournette on the field at the same time. And that might be something they're going to have to do, or at least, drop O'Keefe back a little bit. Someone's going to have to be getting an extra set of hands or a shoulder or something on Myles Garrett in order to free up a little bit of extra time for Brady, because Myles Garrett can make it a very, very long day for the Buccaneers offense if he is getting off the line quickly, getting at Tom Brady, forcing those, some of those throws that we saw earlier in the year when it almost looked like his internal clock was sped up too much because he didn't trust the guys in front of him to keep him upright. You don't want that being the tone that's set in the first quarter, right? You don't want Garrett to get in Brady's face on 2 of his first 3 dropbacks and think, oh boy, here we go. It's going to be a long day against this guy.
Yeah. And I just ultimately think that this is going to have to be a fairly mistake-free football game, which is sad because I would like for the Buccaneers to flex some offensive muscles, prove that they have the capability to really enforce their will on another opponent like they did last year, the year before that, at least offensively speaking. And this game, I think they probably should lean towards a more conservative route, especially because the Browns have a -6 turnover differential. They don't force turnovers. They tend to give them away more often. So I think they have 14 giveaways and 8 takeaways. So, I mean, we're now in week 12, and I know the Buccaneers don't take the ball away either. So, again, this is like it smells low scoring, and it smells like just the defenses it's going to come down to the defense withstand the 2 things we talked about: the defense withstanding the rushing pressure from the Browns, and also the Buccaneers being able to chip away at this rushing game, chip away at this Browns defensive line, and prove they can kind of milk some drives, because they're not going to be able to fling the ball around in the conditions that are coming Sunday if the conditions remain the way that they are, based on what we're reading entering Wednesday.
They will, because it's Cleveland, which is...
And the lake effect and all that stuff.
Ugh, yeah. It's so awful.
It's dreadful.
Well, if it's low scoring, that blows up right in the face of one of my bold predictions from yesterday's episode, that the Bucs offense will average 24 points per game the rest of the season.
Still could happen.
We are going to get into your predictions coming up in just a moment. This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs finds the right people for your team faster and for free. Adding your job listing is quick and easy, and you can add your job in the purple #hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you are hiring. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skill set and experience, so you can quickly prioritize who you would like to interview and hire. That's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus their leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Wrapping things up here on a WTSP Wednesday edition of the Locked On Bucs podcast. Make sure you are coming back tomorrow. Yes, I said tomorrow. David Harrison will be joined by Jeff Lloyd of Locked On Browns for a special crossover Thanksgiving Thursday episode, but it is time for predictions. You all know what that means. Evan is going to give his bold prediction, his player prediction, his score prediction. Then I'm going to ask him for a prediction that he's not prepared for, and I did that on purpose, but we all know how that's going to go. Let's start, Evan, with your bold prediction. What's something crazy that you see happening in this game?
I see I'm going to marry the bold and the players of the game because I think that's ultimately one of the same. And that's going to be Nick Chubb, less than 50 total yards, receiving and running. And that is why my players of the game are going to be Devin White and Lavonte David. You marry the consistency of Lavonte David with the resurgence of Devin White after a cruddy 3 weeks in the middle of the season, and you have something pretty special. Mm-hmm. Not to mention with the defensive line doing the nitty-gritty work that doesn't pop up in box scores, Devin and Lavonte should be controlling the tempo of that defense, setting the tone, and really making sure that the Browns don't pop off. Another bold prediction, I think Kareem Hunt is going to have more of an impact in this game for the Browns than Nick Chubb will. So
possible.
I think the Browns need to move east and west, not north and south. And while Chubb can do it all, don't get me wrong, I think a little scat back, little receiver out of the backfield. I think Hunt provides more versatility, and I think they're going to go more towards that than the Chubb route as much as they usually do over the course of a game. So White and David, I mean, both in double-digit tackles, a few tackles for a loss, maybe a forced fumble, something along those lines. But they're going to be all over the place, and we'll be checking the tape on Monday, being like, dang, they are moving sideline to sideline, and they're the reason why the Browns couldn't break a big one and ultimately lose.
So what you're saying is I need to wait until after this weekend before I fleece my son in a trade for Nick Chubb in our fantasy league.
Correct.
Because he's going to have a down week. I like that idea.
Yep.
He will get Michael Gallup and the Titans defense for Nick Chubb.
There you go. That's an easy accept.
Or he's grounded. That's
the way that it works, because you know what? I brought you into this life. Mm-hmm. And that's the ultimate trump card. So,
yeah. I mean, or I'll stop paying for your hockey. So, good luck finding someone else that's going to do it for you. All right. Mm-hmm. Evan, you've mentioned it a couple of times. It's going to be nasty in Cleveland. And it goes beyond the weather. You got the dog pound. I will say this. Cleveland Browns fans are some of the most loyal humans I have ever seen in my life, and they are passionate. They are loud. They are rambunctious. It's going to be a hostile environment in Cleveland. It does not matter how bad the team is. Doesn't matter how good the team is. The fans are always the same. So how do you see it shaking out? What is your score prediction for the Bucs and the Browns?
Man, like most of these Buccaneers games outside of Munich, this one smells like a cruddy one. Smells like, why am I watching this? Why am I putting myself through this crap? Oh, Byron, you're doing it again. Oh, the Russian game's not working. Oh, my God. We can't get any protection. Like, why are we doing this? So I think the Buccaneers are going to win because
Excellent.
I do believe that they are refocused a bit and they are finding a bit of a stride, but they are going to have to shake off some of those cobwebs coming off the bye week and finding that gelling scenario. So I'm going to go with 17-13 Tampa Bay Buccaneers in a snoozer of a game. And as I said, minimize the mistakes, chip away where you can. I got the Buccaneers finding the end zone a couple of times. The Brownies maybe getting in once, twice. We'll see. But ultimately, this should be low scoring. And just be prepared to be angry at the TV. But, Hopefully they've turned that corner.
I mean, there's no way it's more boring than Jets Patriots this past week, right?
No.
Like, not possible.
No, that was an atrocity.
Zach Wilson
to the sport. And as somebody who grew up or has a family that of Jets fans, grew up a Jet fan, it's painful to watch that. It's really just bad, and more so when you get softballs from the media, just hit it, just hit it out of the park. Don't be a douche, all right? Because you're never going to win being the douche. And now your job's in question because you decided to be pissy at the media after a crap game. So there's my Zach Wilson rant. We're out of it.
The Jets are the Saints. They have a better chance to win if they just suck it up and actually start the better quarterback on their roster.
Yeah, the Jameis Winston thing is very interesting too, though. His quotes of like, oh, it's like standard not to lose your job after an injury. I don't know. I don't know if he knows how Tom Brady became the quarterback that he is today, but that isn't the industry standard. I mean, there is a history of where people have gone the other way.
It kind of is, though. I mean, I get it if the person that replaced you is like on fire.
No, totally. Yeah, no, I agree with you there. I'm just saying should he be playing quarterback? Absolutely, because it's Andy Dalton. Is that the standard in the NFL? Absolutely not.
All right. Well, the bonus prediction that I did not prepare you for, go ahead, pull out the homer card. Who's winning Ohio State, Michigan, and what's the score?
Obviously, I'm going Ohio State, those bums up north. Which is funny, by the way. Brady's going to be playing in Ohio the next day after the game against Donovan Peoples-Jones. So there is a little bit of that going on. But, man, that game scares the bejesus out of me. There's been no more hyped Ohio State-Michigan game than this one since 2006. Huge deal. Even if you're not an Ohio State-Michigan fan, you should be glued to the TV. It's going to be whether Ohio State can stop the run versus Michigan being able to limit Ohio State's athleticism. I have that game as a 28-24 gauntlet with Ohio State winning after all the crap that Harbaugh and Michigan has talked about for a year after finally beating the Buckeyes after losing a million straight.
But still,
Ryan Day has not forgotten about that, and he is going to any which way pound Harbaugh's face into sand if he finds the opportunity.
It's going to be really painful for me to watch my Illini get completely hosed against Michigan last week just to turn around and root for them this week. But I will say this. When I attend a Buccaneers game on Thanksgiving weekend, Michigan and Tampa Bay are undefeated.
What's the record?
1-0.
Oh, there it is. There it is. Okay. All right.
I'll take Michigan 30-28. It's going to be close. It's going to be an exciting game, and unfortunately, I'll be driving through Columbus as it's ending. So
lucky you.
Prayers for me.
Go stop by Buckeye Donuts.
We are out of here. Thank you again for joining. Of course, check out everything that Evan is doing over at 10 Tampa Bay and 10tampabay.com. We want to thank you again for making Locked On Bucs your first listen or view of the day. Now check out the biggest headlines in all of sports by listening or watching Locked On Sports Today, available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. David is back tomorrow on Thanksgiving Day with the crossover, and we will be back on Friday with our full preview episode, as we always do. Of course, you can send us your voicemails to 813-444-5841. Check out everything that I'm doing over at BucsNation.com and follow everything on Twitter at Locked On Bucs, at @JYarcho_Bucs, and at E. WTSP. Hope you all have an absolutely outstanding day. Stay safe, stay healthy, fire those cannons. And we thank you so much for joining us right here at Locked On Bucs.